Jai Sadgurudev. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. This is Subhash Chandra from Singapore, and I am the host for today's forum discussion. Thank you very much for joining us today. Our topic for today is very interesting. We are going to talk about mindfulness. What exactly it is? There are many things which are being said, told about mindfulness, but today we will discuss about it in much more detail. If any one of the listener has any question, please put it on the WhatsApp number +1 646 653 4926, or you can put your question on slido.com/VYGOS. We are talking about mindfulness. Are we talking about overwhelming feeling? Are we talking about stress? Are we talking about emotions? Are we talking about sensory organs or depression, meditation, self-reflection, or probably interrogation, self-interrogation? We are discussing about mindfulness, and all these words which I said are very much linked to the mindfulness. Today we have our speaker from USA. Let me give a detailed description about our today's speaker, Dr. Subhash Chandra ji. He is a forensic psychiatrist and works in the capacity of Unit Chief of Adult Psychiatry Unit in New York. He is also Associate Professor of Psychiatry at Donald Barbara Zucker School of Medicine, Hofstra, New York. He worked as a forensic psychiatrist at Brooklyn Supreme Court, New York, and as a clinical assistant professor at SUNY Downstate Medical Center, SDMC, New York. He completed his medical school in India and was a senior resident at AIIMS, New Delhi, India, before starting this psychiatry residency at SDMC in New York. He completed his forensic psychiatry fellowship at the University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. He is actively involved in organized medicine at the States, New York, and national level via American Medical Association. He has received acknowledgements and rewards for his leadership, research, and involvement in medical education. Dr. Chandra has been disciple of Sadgurudev since 1994 and was a Vihangam Yoga meditation instructor in New Delhi, India since 2004, and later had been given lectures, seminars, presentations on the uniqueness of Vihangam Yoga from a scientific perspective quite frequently time. He was recertified as Vihangam Yoga instructor in New Jersey under the holy feet of Sadguru Sri Swatantra Dev Ji Maharaj. Dr. Chandra believes that there is no pleasure in this universe akin a devotion to Sadguru. But again, there is nothing more difficult than being a worthy disciple. So I welcome Dr. Subhash Chandra on this forum to start some discussion and talk on mindfulness. Dr. Chandra, over to you and welcome to the forum.
Jai Sadgurudev. Thank you, Subhash Chandra ji, for this detailed introduction. We always run short of time, so I would first like to acknowledge that we have already invoked our Sadgurudev here. I heard Vijayji, the way he explained with the couplets from Sorveda, how mindfulness at its base is akin to beginning phase of Vihangam Yoga. I will try to place it in the more consumer perspective of mindfulness. as in why it is so rampant, overrated, or the entire world seems like they are falling for it, behind it. So in 1994, the discoverer or someone who originated it or brought it from Tibetan monk, Mr. John Kabat-Zinn. In his words, mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. I will try to explain it more with examples and with our esteemed Vihangam yogis present on this group. These things are very simple. And however, if I make any mistake, factual mistake or error in my presentation, please forgive me and feel free to correct me. Now, mindfulness and meditation are often used interchangeably or to mean that they are the same thing, and that can be quite confusing. Now, there came the third word, mindfulness, meditation, and no one cares to focus or explain or differentiate between these three: mindfulness versus meditation versus mindfulness meditation. So mindfulness is the awareness that arises when we non-judgmentally pay attention in the present moment, in which one focuses on being intentionally aware of what one is sensing and feeling in that moment without interpretation or judgment. Now, the practice of mindfulness involves breathing methods, guided imagery, and other practices to relax the body and mind to help reduce stress. Now, let me give you an example. And one of the Guru Bhais I saw on our WhatsApp forum had shared articles on mindfulness. So, is it a helpful technique? Yes, it is a helpful technique. Now, one common example is a resin method. You take resin, the dried grape, in your mouth. Now, this is a process of mindfulness meditation. You take a resin in your mouth, you feel the skin, the texture of the resin, how it melts in your mouth, how it dissolves, how it loses its identity, and how your mouth again becomes empty. But in doing so, you are not aware of your emotions. You are not aware if you have any motive in experiencing that or feeling that resin in your mouth. So it is, you are sensing it, you are feeling it without interpretation or judgment. Now, they say that mindfulness reduces anxiety and depression. It teaches us how to respond to stress with awareness of what is happening in the present moment, rather than simply acting instinctively, unaware of what emotions or motives may be driving that decision. Now, simply put, you are at a workplace, someone is bothering you. Now, with that words of ridicule or complaint towards you, your brain will react. Your prefrontal cortex will start thinking, will create responses towards it, and your amygdala, which is the seat of emotion, will also get heightened. Now, if your amygdala gets heightened, you will react instinctively, which is the instinct of self-defense, protecting yourself. You will fight, you'll get emotional. But if you have learned the technique of being in the moment, sensing and feeling the moment, rather than being affected by the moment, then you will be mindful. You will not feel stressed. Your emotions are not heightened in that state. So that is one of the reasons why it is so vehemently practiced, and people feel good about it. Because it simplifies the difficult task of understanding oneself, or it gives someone the false imagery or the mirage that yes, they are understanding oneself. Because we are in the culture of easy fix, easy answer, momentary benefits. So in that moment, since you could control your emotional reaction, so you start liking mindfulness. But that stops there, because you do not have any interest any further to know yourself, or why you are dissatisfied with this life. Why do you have emotions in the first place? Why did someone yelling at you, complaining from you at work even bothered you? I will give another example, but before that, in the word mindfulness, there is the word mind. And as we all know very well, we discuss mind is an entity that only one can experience, but cannot see it, cannot feel it, cannot touch it. But how do you experience it? Through the 5 sense organs. And it works only with one organ at one point of time. And in the words and of Swami Sadgurudev Ji and Sorveda, it is neither conscious nor an inert. It is an agantuk chetan. That means that entity that derives consciousness. Now in meditation, it has its different meanings based on individuals' understanding, a scope, purpose, or desire in life. But in its full truthfulness, and as we understand as Vihangam yogis, that in meditation, an individual is aware of the self. The practice of concentration, as well as the target entity one is concentrating on. That is what is meditation. So meditation can be done at many levels. One, you are not aware of the self, but you are aware of your target entity, that is the movie, and you are responding with your emotions as the movie dictates. But neither you are focused on self, neither you are focused on your own focus, that what you are doing or feeling in that moment. So that won't be called as meditation, because in meditation, an individual has to be aware of the self, the practice of concentration, as well as the target entity one is concentrating on. So now, is mindfulness a meditation? Yes, because you are sitting in a chair, you are aware of yourself, you thought that you need to meditate, you sat down, you have placed a resin in your mouth. So your target entity is the resin on which you are concentrating. You are doing it purposefully, trying to feel it, sense it, and you are practicing it over and over again to be able to feel it in its completeness. So yes, it is a meditation technique. But again, in doing so or saying so, we forget the real meaning of meditation. Meditation truly is the subject of consciousness. When an individual consciousness establishes connection with the supreme conscious entity, that is what meditation is. But again, as we discussed, it is all at the level of what we are, what life means to us, how we define ourselves. This way we simplify the description of our actions, one of them being meditating. Now, moving further, and since this forum is of Vihangam yogis and highly esteemed people, I'm not going to talk about the 5 stages of controlling mind, purification of the mind, awakening of Kundalini, a state of no mind, or the ultimate goal, because that we read, listen, and we are on to it every moment. So I'll focus again back on mindfulness meditation. And now the example that I was talking about. And I also want to focus on the state of restful alertness, as I was seeing that in the forum, WhatsApp forum, someone brought that in the discussion. Now, let's say someone wants to learn swimming. He watches the video of swimming very nicely, very keenly, looks at the entire process. He builds his body, takes good care of his health, his muscles. So what delineates him from others is how many people even want to learn swimming. So how many people even want to learn meditation? First. Second, then he is listening to the video, he is practicing it in his mind without any real life involvement with water and lake and river. So he is important in comparison to other human beings because he wants to learn swimming. He is practicing for swimming. After a month of continuously watching the tapes of swimming, now he came into a swimming pool. He jumped. And because he had watched everything very keenly, he could make 4 to 5 steps in that swimming pool, and he was able to move his body to a certain length. So let's say the swimming pool was of 25 meters. Now this person could move his body without any knowledge, but just by watching the videos to at least 5 meters. Then he got tired, exhausted, got drowned, but he did not die. The guard at the end of the swimming pool was watching him. He could see he is a well-built human being. He is quite capable of swimming. But he doesn't know what swimming is. Just like people who are meditating in this current consumer world do not know that meditation is the science of consciousness. Second, he does not know that it cannot all be done just by watching some TV shows, but he will need a guide, a guru, even though he has everything he believes that he needs for swimming. And he did try to be mindful by learning, by being self-aware that he needs certain things, techniques to be able to swim. So when he jumped in the water, let's still focus the difference between mindfulness and meditation here. The moment he jumps in the water, is he able to have that emotional reaction that comes from amygdala, the fear of drowning, the pain that he got in his extremities because of jumping directly in a wrong way against the thirst of the water. He's aware of only two things. One, he had to swim. Second, the videos he has watched, and he's trying to recreate those videos in his mind in this current real state of water. He's not successful, but yes, he was at least successful for the 5 meters out of those 25-meter length of the swimming pool. By this, we definitely know, can he ever swim in the lake, in the ocean? No, he cannot. He does not know what the water feels like. He does not know the trades of water. So a person who is mindfully doing the exercise, when he's sitting in his chair, being mindful means he's experiencing that the back of his body is touching the chair. His arms are rested on the chair sides. He's wearing the kind of clothes. So he's mindful of the presence by his sensory things. But there is no consciousness in that moment. But it still feels good to those people who do it, because they do not have even a second of mindfulness in their life. They are leading the life as the way life is leading them. They are chasing the life to achieve what we as a social beings have created as a goal and target. So even that 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds of mindfulness, being present in the moment, being able to be aware of the sensory touch contacts around that person, non-judgmentally, not thinking anything else, makes the person feel good. And that is one of the reasons why it is a quick fix for a moment, and so it is attracting and being so beneficial, known to so many people across the globe. Now, coming back to the swimmer person, that swimmer, if he just gets the proper lesson from the lifeguard who tells him what angle the hands should be, what angles the legs should be. And then not only that, he also shows him the rhythm, that in what rhythm the fish crosses the water and does not even realize that the fish is in the water, but still knows its way or pathway through the water. So when under the guidance of a guru, Sadguru, the teacher, when he rises above the state of being mindful, there comes the meditation, then comes, or there comes the self realization, there comes the journey of self discovery. And the purification part would be where he forgets that he carries a body. He just swims in that water like a fish, enjoying the waves. He does not even remember that he is not a fish. He does not even remember that these are the extremities which he is moving so fast, at what angle, in which direction. So, in mindfulness, one of the articles that was also discussed in the forum that I was reading, and we are all aware of it, that in this world of so many people, only handful of people even want to learn swimming. And even in those handful, they don't know why swimming, what is so good about swimming, how in swimming you connect with the water, and how in swimming, you lose yourself. You lose and you become water, in unison with water, and forget that you can get drowned in that water and you may not survive. So those are the very few people, and I hope I have been able to give some insight on the word mindfulness. Now, some people say that let your mind wander. Once it has wandered thoroughly, it will come back where it has to come back. Now, as per the discoverer of this scientific technique, it is not mindfulness. It is mind wandering. And some of the other people have explained it to say that if you are asked to focus at a place, it will be the most difficult thing to focus there. So if you are asked to pay attention in a particular way, in the moment, on a particular thing, it will be most difficult task for you. On the contrary, if you are told that focus on everything else around you, but not on this, what we are suggesting. So your focus involuntarily, without your desire, will keep coming back to what you were said not to focus on. So this is all at the level of mind. And that moment of peace that comes from being mindfully aware of yourself is enough to make it so famous, so well known, and being practiced everywhere. But if we compare it to Vihangam Yoga, there is no comparison. Vihangam Yoga is the science of consciousness. Mindfulness has nothing to do with science of consciousness. Vihangam Yoga is the meditation technique in which we talk about the connection that an individual establishes with the supreme conscious entity. In mindfulness, there is no connection, there is no entity, there is no journey to self-discovery, there is no realization of self. It's just being aware that you are, you exist, you are in the moment. That is enough to make people happy and relaxed. Now, instead of going further on this discussion, and I believe I had 15 minutes, so I would stop here and would request the host to move on with the process. And I think it will be more valuable if I try to answer the questions posed by people instead of trying to explain it the way I have been trying. Jai Sadgurudev, and over to Subhash Chandraji.
Thank you very much, Dr. Subhash. It was very interesting to hear your words and the concept as well. I'm sure all the listeners have enjoyed it and understood the meaning of mindfulness and the science of consciousness, Vihangam Yoga. At the end, towards the end side, you had mentioned about the difference between the mindfulness and the science of consciousness. Definitely, we'll talk more with you in terms of question and answer. We have some questions on slido.com, and I have one question as well, just on the definition of mindfulness, where you mentioned very clearly, though, that mindfulness is being aware but non judgmental, without any interpretation, to pay attention to the present moment. So, one thing what I want to ask you is, you mentioned describing mindfulness is about being non-judgmental. So when we say non-judgmental, does this mean that at the time when we are doing whatever being mindfulness process, we don't have to think anything, or we just be calm, quieter, non-thinking, just being an observer, or actually mind is doing something at that time point?
Subhashji, I think you answered the question yourself very precisely, because mindfulness is awareness in action, or you are applying the awareness, and because on its own, awareness does not have judgment in it. Judgment is a thought that arises within awareness. So as you said in the question, as you told, that is there a thought? No, there is no thought. You are tasting the raisin, but you're not thinking about it. The moment you think, you will have that judgment, whether it is sweet, whether it could be more sweet. So it is just an awareness of the moment. Over to you.
Yes. One more thing you mentioned is that when we do mindfulness practice, it is more linked to the sense organs and its experience. And at the end, you mentioned that Vihangam Yoga, the science of consciousness, is different from mindfulness. So that means we are talking about two different entities. One is the mind associated with the sense organs, and other side is the consciousness. So can you please little bit elaborate it more for the listeners to make a difference, how the consciousness is different from the mind?
Here I would take the most common example that we always use, and I myself have heard it from many Vihangam yogis. In being mindful, there is nothing about the owner of the chariot, which is the soul. So there is no consciousness. We don't even discuss about the self, the origin of the self. So if I have to put it in an example or simplify it, I would say that here the charioteer, the person who is running that chariot, and 5 horses are there trying to take the chariot away in different directions, but the charioteer is being aware in that moment that he is a charioteer. He is the one who is running this chariot. And he is not trying to control any of those 5 horses. What will be mindfulness. Here, there is nothing about the soul even. It is just about the Sarthi, who is realizing that he is a Sarthi, and he is not even thinking about those 5 horses. That is what mindfulness would mean. in this most common example we widely use, where soul is the occupant of that chariot. Over to you.
Thank you, Subhashi. There is one very interesting question on the slide also, and I'm trying to link it, whatever we just discussed. The question is actually why it is difficult for the person himself who put the question, why it is difficult for him or her to practice the meditation every day consistently. Is it true that practicing mindfulness method is more easy and doing the real meditation is difficult? If at all, yes, why it is so?
Again, the question is very interesting and very logical. Mindfulness is more about building the muscles of the brain. Just like building your body and building your biceps. We all want to have a beautiful body, but only few of us have the motivation to go to gym. So whether it is mindfulness or meditation of consciousness, science of consciousness, both need the motivation. Now coming to the part easy versus difficult. You don't want to go to the gym, but you want to have a beautiful body, and you are trying some Surya Namaskar every day in 3 minutes in your room, and that is easier for you to do. It won't give you that good, well-developed biceps, triceps that the models would have. And here by male models, I'm trying to exemplify, just for the sake of understanding, the sadhus of Vihangam yoga who have reached the 5th stages. So yes, you will feel better in that moment while you are doing Surya Namaskar for 3 minutes. Yes, it will make you feel little bit happy, little bit stress-free, little bit energetic, but nothing more. So it will be easier to do, but it won't be the real muscle building exercise. I hope by this analogy, I have been able to give an appropriate answer. Over to you.
Yeah, it is very clear, I think. Just a last question, I think, on the basis of the time. You mentioned about resin method of one type of practice where practitioner take the resin in the mouth and try to sense it through different sense organs, right? So here is this. I mean, it's just my curiosity. Why resin? I mean, can it be something else or anything? It can be. Maybe it can be a sweet. It can be chili, or it can be anything. Or is it just a resin? Is just one example of like this.
Again, Subhashi, I'm glad you brought this up. I think it's not about the resin, and it's not about the sweetness or the chilliness, because it is not the taste that you have to perceive. Because as you remember, you are not there to be judgmental. You are not there to perceive the taste, but you are just to be aware. So there are other examples of mindfulness. One is mindful walking. So in that mindful walking, you walk early morning on the grass with barefoot. Before, you never try to be aware that how your toes touches the grass, then your heel touches, then your toe, then your heel. You're not thinking about how soft the grass is, or is it hurting? Is there any spike anywhere? So that is mindful walking. So being aware without interpretation is mindfulness. So that question, the answer to your question would be, it can be anything based on my knowledge and interpretation. That is what my answer would be. And it would have nothing to do with the taste, but the awareness. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Subhash. It was really very nice being with you, talking to you. I have fully enjoyed the discussion with you, and I'm sure all the listeners also have enjoyed it. Thank you very much for being with us today on this forum. Just to summarize today's discussion, mindfulness is nothing but being aware, non judgmental, and without any interpretation, paying attention at the present moment. For this, mind works with the sense organs, and there is nothing too much of there is not too much of relationship between the mindfulness and the science of consciousness. That's what we learned and heard from Dr. Subhash today. Doing mindfulness practice and doing Vihangam yoga practice, the science of consciousness, these are two different things. One should try and put the effort to move towards the science of the consciousness. And that's what the aim of the life also is. Thank you very much for joining us today for this particular forum where we discussed today the mindfulness. And once again, thank you very much to Dr. Subhash, Vijayji, and Sankalpji to join us today. Thank you and Jai Sadgurudev.
सदा फल शांतिमय शांति शांति